today we are here with Brianne Borden. Welcome, Brianne, and thank you so much for being here with us on this Monday morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yay. I do want to just quickly make sure that we are officially live. Um, Maybe we can all take a quick sec to share it to our pages.
Yeah.
I believe we have been live. I wish there was a way you could like listen really quick, but then also not listen on the stream. It's so silly. Um, if you missed our introduction, if we missed our introduction, um, my name is Kate Aramine, and we are joined by Dr. Brianne Borden and founder Rebecca Caru to talk about Brass Out Loud. Super pumped. Thank you to our two viewers at this time. All right, I have now shared it.
I think I'm.
Beautiful. You're thinking one of them. Awesome.
I know. I'm trying to figure out how to share it. I'm working on it.
Kind of confusing, right? Because then it's like coming from your page. These things are tricky. Amazing. Oh, wait, I need to make sure I can see it so I can track any comments and questions we have. So, hopefully, you heard Rebecca tell you a little bit about who we are and what Brass Out Loud is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our amazing faculty, of which Dr. Brianne is included in that, obviously. So, we have 23 faculty members, which is a super amazing large amount, of which 70% are female, trans, non-binary, or BIPOC, which is unbelievably incredible. And as someone who's never really been a part of a festival with incredible representation, it's kind of amazing and, like an honor to be putting this together, but also just like a really exciting moment in the brass world for this to be a thing. So normally Melissa does this, so I'm going to try and speed through our amazing faculty really quick. So in terms of warm-up sessions, we have Rachel Samayoa on trumpet, we have Alexander Shuhan on French horn, Nicole Abisi leading the trombone warm-up, and Reginald Chapman leading the tuba euphonium warm-up. We have Chloe Rollins leading an amazing Finding Your Sound Through Improvisation class. We have performance master classes with Jennifer Murata and Billy Hunter on trumpet, Jeff Scott and Julie Lansman on French horn, John Rojak and Martin McCain on trombone, Carol Yanch and Charles Villarubia on tuba. Whoa, amazing. We have an audition prep class with Rachel Jenkins. We have musician mindset with Jeff Nelson. We have yoga for all musicians with Dr. Brianne Borden. Awesome. We have Composer 101 on commissioning and building relationships with Megan DeJarnett. We have a Designing Your Career in Music class led by me. And we have two awesome panels, which I think is kind of one of the coolest things that we're doing. Because there's so many amazing conversations, especially now, that we all should be having, should be listening to, should be watching. And so for our Combating Racism in the Music World panel, we have Jeff Scott, Chanel Critchlow, Kiku Collins, and Rachel Samayoa on that one. And then for our Looking to the Future panel discussion, talking about the future of music, the future of education, and how to best support underrepresented voices in the brass community, we have Chloe Rollins, William Purvis, Rodney Marsalis, and Abby Conant. So some cats for sure. Hopefully you heard Rebecca mention about registration, but if not, please go to our website, brassoutloud.com, to register. We are running this amazing Cyber Monday deal, so definitely take advantage of that. We also have a Kickstarter, so if you are finding yourself with extra money this holiday season, please support us or consider supporting us or sharing the page via Kickstarter. Every little bit helps, and we're really excited to present this workshop. So without any more talking, Dr. Brianne Borden, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, your musical upbringing, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and be chatting, and I absolutely love the mission of Brass Out Loud and think it's so awesome. You're totally right that this is. I'm hoping this is like a turning point in the brass world and what we will see more and more of in the future. So thank you. I feel honored to be a part of it. My musical upbringing. has been so I guess I'll start as a kid. I was raised in a very musical household. My dad played the trumpet. I've got three brothers. They're all musicians. Only one of us is no longer currently a musician, but he still picks up his saxophone every now and then. And so it was just kind of natural for me to go in that direction. I actually started on piano. My mom was a pianist. And I started on piano about when my brothers started their instruments, but piano was not a social enough instrument for me. I wanted to be able to like go to rehearsals and hang out with my friends at the same time. And I wanted a louder instrument too. So I went with trumpet. Yep. And I was really lucky at the time. My dad was actually working at Eastman. He was in admissions there, and he connected with Herb Smith, who ended up teaching me for from third grade all the way until my senior year of high school. So I was really, really fortunate to have not only a consistent mentor and inspiring mentor, but like somebody who basically helped raise me. He really, really helped me and was just absolutely awesome. So he was a part of that. And growing up in Rochester, New York, which is where I'm from, there's a really unique trumpet scene there. The community school, the Eastman Community School, does a really awesome job of creating trumpet players. Some of my closest friends are trumpet players that I was in a high school trumpet ensemble with, and there's two youth orchestras in that city, and it's a really unique place where I can look back and see these things that I was in with other people, and now they're professors or professional musicians or touring musicians or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I played in trumpet ensemble with them. So I feel really, really lucky to have been brought up in that very unique scenario. I then went to college at SUNY Potsdam, which is where I currently am right now teaching. And I started off as a music ed major. My professor at the time, after hearing my seating audition, said, we're going to add a double major in performance. You can always drop it. Let's just add it for right now. And I ended up dropping the ed major. So I initially had the ed major because I really looked up to my high school band director. He was awesome, really, really great at his job. And I realized that I needed some personality traits that I didn't have, and where my passion was like with the competitiveness of being a performer and really going in that direction. So there were a couple things that kind of led me there, but ended up doing that. I went on to get my master's at the University of Colorado Boulder, and then eventually my doctorate at Arizona State University. So I graduated with my doctorate in May, which is wild, and also doesn't feel like I graduated because I sat and stared at my name on a PowerPoint. I was like, oh, there I go. And then I am extraordinarily fortunate to have ended up where I am today and teaching. I'm visiting assistant professor of trumpet at SUNY Potsdam, the Crane School of Music. So I'm in the office that I took lessons in every single week for 4 years, which is really wild and a really amazing and meaningful experience. I've got an awesome studio of 16 students. I teach trumpet techniques to music ed majors. I lead the Crane Brass Ensemble. And next semester, I'll be teaching a class, an upper division class on musicians' wellness. So that's like where I'm at in a nutshell musically. And then additionally, my other life is as a yoga teacher and trainer and owner of Yoga for All Musicians, which is a virtual yoga studio, so entirely online, that hosts 17 weekly classes. And it's run and taught entirely by people who have graduate degrees in music and are trained in either yoga and or meditation. So it's a mouthful, but that's where I'm at.
Love it. I think that's so great that like you're so passionate about so many different elements like within the music world, which are like super beneficial. Some that we'll get to talking to a little bit later, especially about, yoga for all musicians and wellness and stuff like that. I can kind of relate to, I ended up dropping my music ed major for performance in my undergrad, so I totally can relate to that. Um, so even though you had dropped the music ed, it's still very apparent that you love education. And can you tell us about your work as a teacher and a clinician?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I made it all the way to my senior year with my ed major, so I still took a lot of those classes, and they helped me every single day. Still, I use them. I ended up having to teach a trombone player back in Phoenix and a tuba player, and like I needed those methods classes. So, very very grateful for those experiences. Um, as an educator, I have taught every age group you could possibly think of prior to being here. I was in Phoenix and spent the past 2 years. I was ABD, so I had finished all my coursework. I was done being a TA at ASU, and I was teaching my own private studio. And it ranged from I had a student who was 8 and just beginning on the trumpet, and a student who was a comeback player and like an ER doctor and was smarter than me in most ways, but I could teach him how to play a scale. Um, so I really enjoyed running a private studio because it really gave me the tools to meet people where they're at, wherever they're at in life, and find different ways of motivation. I couldn't motivate them with your grades, and I had to really get creative about what every individual student's goals and paths looked like. So I loved that. I also was teaching for a program called Harmony Project Phoenix. It's a really awesome program. I believe there's one in LA too. I think there are a few around the country. And their mission is getting instruments to students who maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to get instruments. It's a grant-based program, and I taught students every single week from there, and it was really, really fulfilling. And those students were just so enthusiastic, and they really wanted to be there. And so that was really really meaningful. I also was a TA at both ASU and University of Colorado, so I had my time teaching students. And I will say I love Brass Out Loud for so many reasons, but I'm like on this roster with people like Jen Murata that I've looked up to for a lot of my life. And then I'm also with Megan DeJarnett, who is one of my students at ASU. So she was actually one of my students, and we were friends. And so it's a very like unique experience for me. So yeah, I had the awesome pleasure of teaching. The way that Dave Hickman ran TA ships is that myself and the other TA at the time taught all of the music ed, theory, comp, and therapy majors. So he taught performance majors, and we had the rest. So it was really great experience when it came to running my own studio like I do now. So that's kind of like my consistent teaching life. I've also, like you said, done a lot of clinics, and I am fortunate to have honestly stumbled upon a topic that I care a lot about, and I think other people are beginning to care a lot about. And so I've ended up building a couple of tours for myself and going to schools and being able to present on yoga for musicians and talk about what it is that is so meaningful to me about it. And then in the before times pre-COVID, being able to present recitals and master classes at those schools as well. So I've done a decent amount of that, and yeah, now I do all of that from this little corner that I have here.
That's amazing. I love how like diverse your teaching experience has been, and it's so cool. I think probably, I mean, for me definitely, but also for anyone else who's watching, who's like still in school, still in the path, like upwards to everything. Amazing. Just to see like how much experience you have and how all of that really combines into like showing how great of a teacher you are now. So it's really cool.
Thank you.
This is a unrelated or sort of related question, but it's a surprise to you perhaps. So I was wondering, how, like, whether you knew you were going to end up teaching at Potsdam, like, beforehand, and how that came to be exactly.
No, I had no idea. I went through the search process, the grueling search process. Yeah, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I defended my dissertation, I believe, in April. So it was in April. So it was online, which was unexpected. I graduated in May online. I have a very close relationship with my predecessor. He's my mentor. I have been coming back to teach in the summers, the past few summers for the summer program here. And so I knew he was retiring. Like, I knew that that was happening, and I was getting my CV ready, and I would be lying if I didn't say that was a little bit of a kick in the butt to finish my degree. But it didn't give me, there was no leg up or anything in that capacity. I, was just waiting for the search to be announced. I sent in all of my materials, and like at this time I was on unemployment. I'd been laid off from all of my teaching jobs. I had all my gigs canceled, dealing with a lot of what a lot of musicians are unfortunately still dealing with. And so I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do, because I did not feel like it was in the bag or it was mine by any means. I just was applying to everything. This was the dream, but it was like any opening, let's send it in. I applied to jobs I'm not qualified for. Like, I applied to things that were like way above an entry level position in academia. So I just threw my name in the ring as much as I could. And I started making a plan B. Like, the process was slow because of the pandemic. Most hiring processes are right now. And so I don't want to live in Phoenix anymore. It was also July in Phoenix, so nothing against Phoenix, but July in Phoenix, everyone will want to move away. So I'm like thinking of moving back to the East Coast, and like, where am I going to find some gigging and adjunct opportunities, and what can I do? And I got an email for an interview, and like the rest is kind of history. And I feel, like so honored to be sitting in my teacher's chair. And I placed a lot of pressure on myself because this was like the dream job. And so it's really cool to be able to kind of take the reins from him, at least, for right now. So who knows what the future has in store, but I'm here right now.
You're killing it, so.
Thanks.
That's amazing. I love that. I have my dream set on like a similar position, so I'm definitely curious as to how that happened. So as a first year college educator during COVID times, we are wondering about how your experience has changed teaching online and how you've adapted to the challenges that the pandemic has posed.
Yeah. Rumor has it that first year teaching is overwhelming regardless. And then pile a pandemic on top of it, and it's like, what am I doing? But it has been overwhelming at times, but it's also been extraordinarily fulfilling. And the way that we are dealing with it, so students are completely virtual now, but we haven't been the whole semester. I feel really, really, really lucky to be in a place that's handling it in a relatively responsible way. Every faculty member and every student was getting tested every 2 weeks. So I felt comfortable having some in-person things with precautions, bell covers, puppy pads, 15 feet away from each other, that kind of stuff. But what I did was teach my students in person 1 week, because we could only play for 30 minutes and then the room had to air out for an entire hour. So we do in person for 1 week and then virtual another week. And there are some benefits to virtual. I've started seeing the bright side in the virtual stuff, because a piece of advice that I was given throughout my entire education was record your lessons, record as much as you can. these students have to, like, they have to be doing it. That's part of the norm at this point in time. And there's, you know, that benefit to it. There's the benefit of, you know, I mentioned I teach the trumpet techniques class. I put my students into breakout rooms and have them do peer teaching. If we were all in the same classroom, that would be loud and painful. They're doing great, but that's a lot of beginning trumpet players playing at the same time and trying to tell each other what to do, you know? So, that's awesome. They can do that. They can have those breakout rooms, and I can just kind of pop in and silently observe and then go to the next one. And using the technology to our advantage, like, has been really helpful to just kind of reframe when I start to feel overwhelmed or exhausted, or, you know, anything that anybody's feeling in these moments that are totally valid and understandable. So that's been kind of my big tool with it, is figuring out okay, I can't do this. I can't hear them play in person, but what can I do instead that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise? And it's been good. And just finding ways to connect my students and to each other, and make sure that there's still some sort of semblance of community, even though I can't have all 16 of them in the same space at the same time. Finding ways to build that in other ways. And yeah, I think that my students are going to, anybody that's studying right now is going to come out of this definitely stronger than I did in my undergrad. You know, this is like, Angela Duckworth's Grit is one of my favorite books, and like this is grit. This is what they're showing right now. If they can make it through this, like, it's going to be easy peasy moving forward. So
I love that. I have two quick, tiny questions. You mentioned, I remember seeing you post on Facebook a couple months ago, probably in the beginning of the semester, about creating community for your students. And so now here we are at the end of the semester. Do you feel like, I mean, it sounds like you've figured that out. How do you create community for your students online? And then also, how do you help them with like motivation and lack of focus and all of those kind of like annoying things that I've seen like students struggling with now, for sure?
yeah, yeah. I gain a lot of inspiration from the people that have been doing it so well so far, and find my own kind of takes on that. So, one thing that was recommended to me, I want to say it was Phil Snedeker, but I could be totally wrong on that. I believe that this was his recommendation, or he said what he did, which was a pizza party. And, you know, I ordered pizza for every single one of them. I've got students that aren't on campus that are living downstate, and like, I had pizza ordered to their house, and we all sat on Zoom and had a pizza party. And it was like, we can't do this in real life, but we can have this connection. And I made a student a host, so that at one point I just left. I was like, I'm going to bed. You guys do your thing. And I think they stayed on for like another hour to 2 hours and just connected with each other. And so things like that, you know, it's been a tradition in my studio to do some sort of holiday party. My studio being my predecessor studio, to do a holiday party and like a Secret Santa gift exchange sort of thing. So we set that up. I'm like drawing names today, and we're going to do that over Zoom. It's going to, again, be just a Zoom party, and people can like watch their person open up their gift on Zoom. So finding those, I like to find those kind of non-trumpety connections to make, so that we see each other as humans and support each other as humans and the whole person, rather than just the trumpet player. That being said, I don't think he knows it, but I'm a huge fan of Whiff Rudd, and he has a book called Collaborative Practice Concepts, which has it's dual practicing. And so it's one person practicing with another. It's required material for all of my students, and every single studio class, I do breakout rooms where I just randomize it. So it's 2 people per breakout room, and whoever you're assigned to, that's your fundamental buddy for the week. And you get together and you do fundamentals, or they can do fundamentals. I highly recommend out of the Whiff Rudd book, or they can, you know, play for each other if they've got their jury coming up, so they're still playing in front of each other, and they have that trumpet related connection in that way too. So that's how I've been doing that. When it comes to like goal setting and motivation, this has been like an uphill battle for everybody. It's been so difficult. They At the beginning of the semester, we did a lot of goal setting. So I'm huge on like semester goals. Well, I'll start big, like, what do you want out of your life? You know, and then come down. Okay, so by the end of your college career, here's what you want to have accomplished. By the end of this year, here's what you want by the end of the semester. And so we check back in on goals every few weeks or so, making sure that the actions they're taking are on track to those goals, which then lead to the bigger ones, and just making sure we both hold each other accountable in terms of what that path looks like, knowing that we can change it at any point in time if it feels like it's not resonating with them. So a lot of that and practice sheets. I have been inspired by the practice sheets on Tom Hooton's website, and that he uses with a lot of his students, and building up these routines and making sure they're paying attention to every part of their playing and not just the things they like.
I think that's great. I think that's, how do I phrase this? There were a lot of people going into this, like this scenario of learning online, teaching online, that were just, I found it very easy to give up almost. Like it was like, oh, like, you know, it's not the same as in person. And it's not. I mean, that's like the honest truth. Teaching in person and, you know, playing for people in person is just not the same as playing online. But I love how like you took it and made it something so positive, and you did it in such like a creative way that really, you know, gets people involved in like a way that, right, like you were saying about like the fundamentals class, like you can't have everybody go off in like a different separate corner of like the same room, and it's you know, a big disaster at that point. But you can do that online, and that's something that, you know, I don't think so many people would have thought of. So I admire like your creativity with, you know, being so versatile with the online learning versus the in person, because you know, even like you were saying about motivation and goals, I mean, so many of us at different points, you know, during the year, we're just ready to throw in the towel and say, I'm so done with this year and everything like that.
Yeah, it's a the words that I can use to describe like teaching right now is like trying to ride this really thin line of maintaining high expectations and a extreme level of understanding. Because like, you know, there is this like, all of the teachers I admire, it's because they were like, nope, this is what you can do and this is what you're going to do, and I won't accept, you know, like, I know you're capable of this, and that's what I want to provide my students. That being said, if I'm placing expectations up here and they're managing online learning, and, you know, especially for first year students where this is like their first experience of being, you know, defining their own schedule and when they're working and all of that stuff, there has to be that extreme level of understanding and communication between myself and the students, so that we all know what's going on, and like, okay, we can still reach those high levels of expectations, but we got to take it back a step for a moment so that you can be yourself to get there.
That's wonderful, and I think that that's something that people really need right now, is just that compassion and that level of just understanding like what we're all going through, and you know, we're each going through the same thing, but we're going through it differently. And I think that it's, you know, like you were saying, it's good to just, you know, have to like take a step back and say, you know, let's just get on the same level, and you can still, you know, achieve those goals. With that being said, we're going to change topics just a little bit. Can you tell us about the Phoenix Brass Collective, how it came to be, and how you're still connected to that project?
Yeah. Oh, the Phoenix Brass Collective has a big place in my heart. I am actually no longer connected to the project. Let's see, part of it is like location. All of it is location. I can no longer be connected to it. But so, wow, it was probably 3 years ago now, I believe. Myself and a few other brass players in the area were wanting some sort of symphonic brass ensemble. So there's the Salt River Brass Band is in Phoenix as well, which is an awesome group, and we wanted to make sure we did something different, and we could, add something new to the brass community in Phoenix. And so we got together and created a group, and our first name was Burnin' Brass, which it didn't stick, so that's good. And we put on a pretty good season. We we're trying to just figure out ways to really legitimize ourselves and make sure that we had the best musicians in the Valley, because that's what we were going for. We wanted a professional group. So we ended up pulling in a few more people. We switched directions. We were able to, we made our list of like ideal people involved, and somehow they all said yes, which was just phenomenal. So Deanna Swoboda, who's the tuba professor at ASU, and one of my big mentors, she said yes to being our music director. And we kind of like took a turn for the better, and it was already a really great thing, but we got a lot of the best brass players in Phoenix to agree to this thing that at the time was not paying any money. We got started just by the generosity of musicians' time and energy. And then our second year under the name Phoenix Brass Collective, we were able to, start being a group that paid our musicians and compensated them for the energy that they were putting forward into it. It's developed into this really awesome thing. Right when I accepted my current job and had to leave Phoenix Brass Collective, we were in the process of planning this competition for young musicians. We'd done a lot of multi-track recordings. So yeah, I love that group. I was personnel director of it, as well as one of the founding board members. And I really can't wait to see what it's gonna look like in 5 years or something, because I think it's gonna be pretty awesome. One of our I don't know, who we looked up to, and one of the things we were kind of going for is like a Summit Brass sort of feel. So it's gonna be great, and they're getting creative with what that looks like during a pandemic, because who knows when live music is gonna happen and everything. But yeah, that was a really awesome thing to be involved in, and my first step into what it looks like to legally establish. It's a 401c3, so legally establish things. Our treasurer had to open a bank account, and that gave me actually a lot of tools to then feel a little bit more confident in establishing an LLC with Yoga for All Musicians and doing all of that stuff that's required that they don't teach you in music school.
So many of those things, yes. Speaking of yoga, obviously we're so excited to have you on faculty teaching a yoga class. So how did you get involved in wellness, and then how has that evolved, and how did you start Yoga for All Musicians?
Yeah. So I always say I play the trumpet because of my dad. I do yoga because of my mom. She dragged me to yoga starting in middle school, I think. And so I was really involved in it. Well, no, that's a lie. I was involved in it once a week to hang out with my mom. And I still didn't quite understand a lot of the things. She would go meditate and I'd be like, why are you going to go stare at a wall? That sounds really counterproductive. I'm not sure what the end goal is here. And she was like, you could really use some of this, but I didn't know that at the time. And I ended up going off to college and stopping that because it was really a time for me to connect with my mom and spend that time with her. And so I didn't continue doing yoga, and I did what so many first-year college students do, which is go from playing, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half a day in high school to 6 hours or whatever, practicing lessons, brass ensemble, brass quintet, wind ensemble, name it, and I was doing it. So my body could not handle that. And I did not have the musculature to hold up my instrument for those hours on end. And the trumpet isn't a super heavy instrument, but like I had never done a push-up in my entire life until, a few years ago, probably. No, maybe 10 or 11 years ago now. But yeah, so I developed tendonitis in my upper back and lateral epicondylitis in my forearm, which is the same as tennis elbow. I also have always kind of dealt with pretty high levels of anxiety, both generalized and otherwise, and performance anxiety. And so in seeing my physical therapist, she recommended I go to yoga again and try it out. And for those of you that don't know, I'm at SUNY Potsdam, which is in a very small town in Potsdam in upstate New York, just south of the Canadian border. And we did not have a yoga studio at that time, like at all. So there was one Kundalini yoga teacher in the area. So I ended up doing that once a month. And actually my mentor, my teacher's partner, her and I would go weekly to that. And then the counseling center offered free yoga as well. So that's what I was doing. And I started seeing this total shift in my body, how I carried my body. My injuries were pretty much gone with that and physical therapy. And I was like, oh, I don't get so nervous anymore. I'm not so like freaked out about performing. I actually feel like I've got some confidence on stage. And I realized it was the yoga. Like it was all of the breathing. It was all of the mobility training. It was everything that I was doing in those classes was applying directly to me being a trumpet player and a musician. So I got really passionate about it. And my senior year, I did a yoga internship. My counseling center offered that. And that was kind of my first go at doing some research in how yoga can affect musicians. And then when I went off to Colorado, I knew that I wanted to get certified to teach yoga because I wanted to teach yoga for musicians. So that's one of the reasons I ended up going to the University of Colorado. First of all, Boulder is a place where there's a lot of yoga happening. And second of all, they actually have a wellness program in the music school there, and that was really attractive to me. So I got certified to teach yoga my first year of my master's, and through the wellness program started teaching yoga for musicians, which was really awesome. And that developed into, I know this is going to be my doctoral project and my dissertation project. And like that was kind of, the next goal. So I went to ASU and I told David Hickman that this is my project, and he was like, okay, awesome. And I was able to finish that. And yes, that is it's, what is the title of it? Yoga for Musicians, a Practical Guide. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. It's online. But the goal was to find ways that yoga could help injury prevention, efficient body use, and manage performance anxiety. And so that ended up being my doctoral project. And along this journey, while I'm doing clinics on it and everything like that, I met two other women who are doing similar things. And one's a trombonist and one's a flute player. And we'd started kind of connecting with each other on Instagram and on YouTube because we were all putting out our own individual things. And it was kind of like, well, we seem to get along really well. And we could either sit here doing our own like paths and trying to almost compete with each other, or we can join forces. And that is how Yoga for All Musicians came to be. So that's where it's at now in the wellness journey.
I also love that because it's such an inspiring like women coming together story, especially in the brass world. There's often so many of this like women against each other thing going on, and so cross instruments too, like to be able to collaborate with those people is amazing.
Well, I'll share too if you don't mind. I'm a talker if you can. I'll just keep talking. But so Amelia Rosenberger is one of the co-owners of Yoga for All Musicians, and we actually met in person. We'd been, chatting on Instagram, but we met in person at the International Women's Brass Conference in 2019 in Arizona, and I was presenting on yoga for musicians, and I knew she was going to be there. We had planned to meet each other, and she was sitting in the front row with this like big cheerful smile on her face, and she is one of the most supportive and friendly people I have ever met in my entire life. But because of that assumed competition that happens in the brass world a lot, and oftentimes from one woman to another, I was like, what's her angle? What's going, like presenting, and the whole time I'm like, does she even buy any of this that I'm saying? Am I saying all the wrong stuff? Like just assuming. And then afterwards we like gave each other a big hug and we were instant best friends. But there's that, like, yeah, it's such an awesome story of us like coming together and being like, oh, we can just be friends. This doesn't have to be a big deal, which is really, really great.
Yes, women supporting each other. It's the thing. I love yoga. I just finished my second Yoga with Adriene 30-day run, and it's been great. I need to make it to more of Yoga for All Musicians classes, and hopefully anyone watching, please go. Clearly they're amazing. We're gonna switch gears slightly, and Rebecca is gonna take it away.
Perfect. Really quick though, if anybody on Facebook has any questions for Dr. Brianne Borden, please drop them now. It would be a great time to do so. So Brianne, what would your advice to young musicians, especially those who are underrepresented brass players, what would it be? And both in navigating normal times and COVID times.
Yeah, I come back to, I can't take any credit for this phrase, but it's guided me through my entire life, and it's know your why. If you know your why, that's that's the fuel for your fire. So, and that's a non-distinguishable flame. I don't know if that's the word I want, but it can't be put out. Like, that fuel will keep your fire lit at all times, knowing your why. My why is to inspire other people to make beautiful music. Like that's one of my big whys, is just connecting people through beautiful music, and that's not just musician to musician, but musician to audience, whatever, teacher to student, whatever that is, that connection of humans through the use of music. When you realize that, when you remember that what you're doing is something bigger, nothing else. There are days that I'll be annoyed with something or somebody or a situation. But what we do as musicians is so much bigger than that. And that goes for the people that might be inclined to annoy another person or make choices that belittle somebody for one reason or another. Your why is messed up. Like, if that's the case, like if that's what you're doing, you got to reconnect with what the heck you're doing in this field, because there's no space for that. There's absolutely no space for people whose why is to feel better about themselves and to uplift only themselves. Unfortunately, we do have that. We are brass players after all. But just knowing your why and coming back to it every single day. That's the thing that keeps me grounded. And when things feel overwhelming or difficult, or I'm frustrated that I either did or did not get hired for something because I'm a female, like those things can feel like, well, what's all this hard work for? What's my degree for? Please just hire me because I'm good at the trumpet. Like, like hire me because you've heard me play. Or don't hire me because you've heard me play. That might be the case too. I've had some days where I suck. Like, that's also fine. Like, like have it be based off of that or what I bring to the table as a human being, and the attitude that I have when I do show up to gigs. And so knowing your why will bring you back to that, and it will also make it so that you maybe are more likely to get those gigs. A piece of advice I give my students is be prepared and be nice. Like I don't practice your butt off, that's fine, but if you're showing up entitled and mean and nasty, they're not going to hire you again. I don't care how good you sound. Or you could be the nicest person on earth, but if you're sight reading, you're in trouble. So like coming back to your why will motivate you to be prepared. It will also remember to be nice, because what you're doing really is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than any ego or individual agenda.
I love that. I think that that's something that everybody needs to hear, and definitely reflect on. And I definitely agree that, like, if you're in this just for yourself and you're mean to your colleagues and people, it's not a good look for you. So I definitely, and I love the concept of like, find your why. Because I mean, that's something that I've never heard before. So like I had never, I guess I know why I love to do things, but I never thought about it in that way, if that makes sense. So I think that that's something that everybody can really use, even in just like their personal life, not even like music related, to really like hone in on like, why they want to do things and be the person who they are. So I think that that's some really great advice that you offered. So thank you for that.
You can thank Brene Brown for brainwashing me.
She is great. Every time you post like a book or a podcast recommendation, I'm seriously all over it. So
I'm like, yes, I absolutely will. I'm all about I like fly through podcasts and books, and yeah. And non-music books have inspired my teaching in my music world so much. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Before we close things out and ask our last question, if anyone has any questions, like we said, please drop them below, but also feel free to ask them even if it is you're watching this 5 hours from now or whatever. We will definitely get back to you. So for our last question, we are wondering, what is your ideal brass community?
Ooh, it's so many things. Supportive. Number one, supportive of each other. I'm the first to admit, like, I don't want to be hypocritical here in any way. I'm a very competitive person. I'm a highly competitive person. I think that's one of the things that has gotten me through a lot of things in my life so far. But that being said, making sure that the person I'm competing with the most is me. Is this right here, and that, like I said, everything else, like it's so much, it's just noise outside of that. So supporting each other in our own personal like competitions, or you can be, I have friends that I am very close with that are kind of in the same, applying for the same jobs as me, and we talk about it openly. There's no behind the back business. It is just like, I want to see you succeed as much as I succeed, because that means if I'm hanging out with this person, we're doing the right stuff. I'm in the right place. I'm hanging out with the people that are going to keep moving in this direction. And that's what I want. I want to be spending time with people that are going to be successful. And even if that means that I don't get that one that day, like my time will come. Our paths are different, and that's fine. So supporting each other through that, and through this highly competitive and crazy field, collaborating with each other and making sure that we're working together, because that's how we grow. That is how we grow. Let's see. I have a bunch of like adjectives that come to mind when I think of my ideal community. This one maybe isn't one that people may think of immediately, but vulnerable. willingness to be honest with ourselves and with each other. You know, saying, going into, for example, going into a pandemic, we're teaching in a pandemic. You know, I told my students, I'm going to mess up. Like, I am going to mess up. You're also going to mess up. When we are going to connect is where we both admit those things. When we let those things, ego off to the side, and we admit, like, hey, this is hard and things are difficult right now, and this is me being vulnerable and telling you that I'm struggling, and I'm not going to get this assignment in on time or whatever. We need more of that, because then there's more understanding that I talked about earlier. Then there's the more like compassion if you actually understand what's happening in the other person's head. And that's not just like teacher to student, but that's like colleague to colleague, and somebody that is sitting next to you at a gig or whatever it is. That vulnerability is just going to make more of a human connection. And when it comes down to it, music is human connection. Music is human connection. So to pretend like we're robots and to pretend like things are as black and white as they are on the page is just fake. It's false. It's not what's actually happening in here and in here. And so having more of that vulnerability in the brass world, I think, would be incredible. I think it would be great. And my last adjective I'm going to say is like this sense of lightness. We take things so freaking seriously. And like, there's a time and a place for that, for sure. And I think that that's really important. But allowing yourself to be goofy and to be silly and to like make mistakes. And like, I didn't touch jazz for a lot of my life because I suck at it, you guys. Like, I'm not good at jazz. And part of that is like this pressure I put on myself to be good at it, because this is I'm a classical musician and I play the trumpet and I've been taking lessons for blah, blah, blah years. And, when I let myself have fun and get goofy, yeah, it sounds bad, but it's fun. And like, what's the point if I'm not enjoying myself? If I'm, only doing things that I'm good at, then there's absolutely, there's no light in the world. So yeah, lightness.
I love that. I also feel like all of those things help you become such a better teacher. I know, like, being willing to suck at something or to admit that I don't know something, or that I'm struggling in front of my students is really great for them, because they're like, oh wait, yeah, like, and we obviously learn so much from each other too. And then speaking just about Brass Out Loud, between myself, Rebecca, and Melissa, like, over the past couple months, we've had so many moments where we're all like, oh my God, this is hard. Like, I'm wearing pajamas all day and I am a hot mess. And yeah, and it's really great. Even though like the three of us have literally never been in a room at the same time before, that we're able to have these experiences and support each other and pick each other up when times are tough. And also, yeah, so it's really, I've been enjoying that supportive vibe as well.
Yeah, I love it. That was the same with establishing Yoga for All Musicians. We like, I think like day one of trying to start a business, we were like in tears with each other on the phone, just like, okay, this is going to be okay. If we can cry together, we can start a business together. It's going to be fine.
I love that. Yeah, I think that everything you said is just, nails. It's just great. So lastly, before we wrap up, again, any last minute questions coming through on Facebook, please send them now. We are going to wrap up. So again, Dr. Brianne Borden, thank you so much for being here and sharing your light with us, for example. I think it's absolutely wonderful. In addition, again, just quick reminders, we have a Kickstarter. Kickstarter is available until December 14th. So if you feel the need to donate, anything is appreciated. Please do. If you're interested in registering, today is definitely one of those days to do that. Cyber Monday. We're doing a $100 3-day registration fee, as well as you can get a free t-shirt when you register, limited edition bold t-shirt. So if you're interested, today is definitely the day to do that. It will end at 11:59 p.m. tonight. So please, if you're interested, get on it today, and we will see Dr. Brianne Borden again on January 10th for her 10 a.m. Yoga for All Musicians class. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions for you today. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their Monday, and we will see you on Friday again at 10 a.m. Have a good one.